I'm Jasmine, and I've been a senior project manager with Bennett Construction for the last 4 years. I enjoy the pressure, in contrast to many of my coworkers who gripe about our busy schedules and picky clientele. Seeing a project through to completion, from drawings to ribbon cutting, is incredibly fulfilling. I live in a little flat in downtown Portland, but it's mine, or will be after I pay off the mortgage. On clear days, I can see Mount Hood in the distance from my balcony, which views out over the river. My phone buzzed this Friday night while I was sipping a glass of Pinot Noir and taking in a rare moment of solitude. My screen was illuminated by Mom's face. I tucked the phone between my shoulder and ear and said, "Hey, Mom," while refilling my glass. Jasmine, honey. There was that artificial joy in her voice that generally indicated she was craving something. "Hey, next Saturday we're having a family meeting with your father. We need you to join us. Everyone will be there. I'll prepare your preferred lasagna, which has a handmade sauce and 3 cheeses." My mom understood that my weakness was her famous lasagna. I couldn't resist grinning. "I'll be there." We hung up, and I went back outside to my balcony. I had not seen my folks for months. With their hectic retirement routine of golf and community theater and my 60-hour work weeks, we hardly ever saw one another outside of important holidays. It would be interesting to see my younger siblings. The twins, Tyler and Tiffany, were 12 years my junior. They were still in elementary school at the age of 24, receiving the newest technology and lots of attention, while I was moving into my first apartment and finishing college. Between raising me and rearing them, our parents' parenting style had drastically changed. For me, it was all about independence, saving money, and taking responsibility. I started washing my own laundry by the time I was 12. By the time I was 14, I was the twins' go-to babysitter whenever our parents wanted to go out. Tyler and Tiffany, on the other hand, had a lot more indulgence and fewer rules growing up. They were still being tucked in at night when I moved out when I was 18. They both stayed in apartments that our parents helped pay for when they were 24 years old, while they found themselves. Before choosing communications as his major, Tyler had gone through 3 different college programs, and Tiffany was currently unemployed after leaving her job as a barista due to her manager being totally toxic. At precisely 4:00 p.m. on the next Saturday, I pulled into my folks' driveway. Tyler's motorbike and Tiffany's vivid blue Kia were already parked in front. Fantastic. Since I was the last to arrive, they had most likely been referring to me. I heard laughter coming from within as I got closer to the front door. I pressed the doorbell, and it stopped suddenly. Mom replied with a smile that seemed a little forced and an apron on. "Jasmine, come on in." The scent of perfume and garlic filled her brief embrace with me. The twins were seated closely together on the couch in the living room, their heads cocked in a secretive manner. They both looked up at me at the same time, wearing identical fake casualness expressions. Tiffany twirled a strand of blonde hair around her finger and murmured, "Hey, Jazzy, great outfit." Leaving work? But I didn't bother correcting her because it was Saturday. "Hi, Tiff." "Tyler." My brother waved a little without standing up when I nodded to him. I entered the dining room, where Mom was arranging the good china, which we used exclusively for Christmas and Thanksgiving. Observing? Wow, bringing out the fancy stuff. This must be some family meeting. A glance between Mom and Dad caused a tremor of uneasiness. The twins strolled in and sat down opposite me as usual before I could inquire what was happening. The conversation stayed excruciatingly shallow all through supper. Mom mentioned her gardening club. Dad said he was thinking about getting a new golf club. The twins gossiped about acquaintances of theirs that I didn't know. No one asked about my work or life, which wasn't unusual but still stung. The lasagna was amazing, as promised, but I couldn't fully enjoy it with the underlying tension in the room. Mom's hands trembled slightly as she served dessert, homemade tiramisu, another one of my favorites. "Okay," I finally said, setting down my fork. "What's going on? You're all acting weird, and Mom's made two of my favorite dishes. Just tell me what this is about." My parents exchanged another loaded glance before Dad cleared his throat. "Jasmine, you know we're getting older, and we've been thinking about the future," he began. Mom jumped in. "We've decided to finalize our will, and we wanted to tell you about it in person." "Okay," I said cautiously. "We've decided," Dad continued, "that the house and the lake cottage will go to Tyler and Tiffany." The room went silent. I stared at my father, waiting for the rest, but he just looked at me expectantly. And I finally asked. "That's it," Mom said, her voice oddly defensive. "You should understand, honey. You're doing so well financially, and the twins are still finding their way. They need the security more than you do." I looked across the table at my siblings. They were both trying and failing to suppress smug smiles. "Just so we're clear," Tyler said, leaning forward, "we wanted you to know now so there's no confusion later. Everything goes to us." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Everything. The house that I'd been helping pay the mortgage on for the past 4 years. The cottage that I paid $30,000 to renovate last summer. Mom's face flushed. "That's not relevant, Jasmine. Family helps family, you know that." "Yeah, family helps family," I repeated slowly. "Like when I paid for both their college tuitions, or when I send you $600 every month for household expenses." My parents looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Tiffany snorted. "Don't act all high and mighty, Jazzy. You've always been jealous that Mom and Dad love us more." "Excuse me." I felt my face growing hot. "It's true," Tyler added. "You've always resented us because you had to babysit while we got to have fun. It's not our fault you were born first." I looked at my parents, waiting for them to defend me, to say something, anything, to contradict this ridiculous accusation. Instead, Mom's face hardened. "You should be ashamed, Jasmine. Talking about money at a family dinner? You've always been obsessed with counting every penny. Meanwhile, your brother and sister are struggling to find good jobs in this economy. And whose fault is that?" I shot back. "You've never made them take responsibility for anything. They can't keep jobs because they've never had to work for anything in their lives." "See," Tiffany said triumphantly, "jealous and greedy." I pushed my chair back from the table. "What I see is that I've been supporting this family for years while getting nothing but criticism in return. And now I find out you're cutting me out of the will entirely. For what? For being responsible." Dad stood up abruptly. "I think you should leave, Jasmine. When you've calmed down and can discuss this rationally, we can talk again." I was stunned into silence. As I gathered my purse and jacket, the twins smirked at me from across the room. "Don't let the door hit you on the way out," Tyler called after me. "This is our house now, not yours." The drive home was a blur. All I could think about was how blind I'd been all these years. The drive home felt like an out-of-body experience. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, but I barely registered the road in front of me. By some miracle, I made it back to my apartment without incident. "You're such an idiot, Jasmine," I muttered to myself as I kicked off my shoes in the entryway. "Such a complete and utter fool." I went straight to my wine rack and grabbed a bottle of Cabernet, not the cheap stuff I usually save for cooking, but the expensive one I'd been saving for a special occasion. "Well, finding out your family has been using you like an ATM seems special enough." As I poured myself a generous glass, memories flooded back. All those times I'd helped them financially over the years. 3 years ago, when Tyler totaled his first car, I gave him $5,000 for a down payment on a new one because he needed reliable transportation for school. Last year, when Tiffany decided she wanted to become a yoga instructor, I paid for her $2,500 certification program. Then there was the $30,000 I spent renovating the lake cottage after a pipe burst and caused water damage, a cottage I've used exactly twice in the 4 years since my parents bought it. But the biggest expenditure by far was covering their house payments. 4 years ago, when my parents were looking to downsize from our old family home, they fell in love with their current place, but struggled with the monthly payments on their retirement income. They took out the mortgage themselves, but right after I got my promotion, they asked if I could help them with the payments. So for the past 4 years, I've been sending them $1,800 every month to cover their mortgage, plus the additional $600 I sent them each month for utilities and property taxes. $2,400 a month, I said aloud, doing the math. For 4 years, the total made me nauseous. Almost $115,000 I'd given them. And for what? To be told I wasn't getting anything in the will because I was doing well financially. I took my wine to the couch and stared out at the city lights. The truth was, I wasn't even that interested in inheriting their house or the cottage. What hurt was the dismissive way they'd announced it, as if my contributions meant nothing, as if I meant nothing. And using my favorite meal as a bribe, that was just manipulative. I opened my banking app and stared at the scheduled transfers. $1,800 to Mom and Dad, mortgage scheduled for the 15th. $600 to parents' expenses scheduled for the 1st of each month. With a deep breath, I canceled both recurring payments. Then, I turned off my phone, finished my wine, and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. For the first time, I didn't have to worry about setting aside a huge chunk of my paycheck for my parents. I could actually start saving aggressively for my own future. I spent the next 2 weeks throwing myself into work, staying late at the office and bringing projects home on weekends. My phone remained blissfully silent. No calls or texts from my family. It was as if our confrontation had never happened. Then, exactly 14 days after the disastrous dinner, I received a text from my mother. "Jasmine, don't forget the mortgage payment is due today. Also, we need the household money by Friday. The electric bill is higher this month." I stared at my phone in disbelief. Was she serious? After everything that had happened, she was still expecting me to send money, as if cutting me out of the will and insulting me to my face was just business as usual. I typed a response. "I won't be making any more payments for the mortgage or bills. I'm not going to financially support a house that you've made clear I have no stake in. Please make other arrangements." I hit send and set my phone down, my heart pounding. Within 15 minutes, it rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. "How dare you?" she shrieked, skipping any greeting. "You can't just stop paying without warning. What are we supposed to do?" "Hello to you too, Mom," I said, keeping my voice calm. "And I'm giving you warning now. I won't be making any more payments. You can't do this to us. We're your parents. You have an obligation." "I don't actually," I interrupted. "I've been helping voluntarily because I thought we were a family who supported each other. But after learning that you and Dad are leaving everything to Tyler and Tiffany, I realize this arrangement isn't fair to me." "This is about the will," she huffed. "I knew it. You're just greedy and jealous. Your father and I raised you better than this." "No, Mom. This is about respect. I spent years helping all of you financially, and in return I get cut out of the will and insulted at dinner. I'm done being the family piggy bank." I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking. The calls started coming in almost immediately. First my mother again, then my father, then both twins. I let them all go to voicemail. Their messages ranged from tearful pleas to vicious insults. "Jasmine, please," Dad begged in one message. "We can't make the mortgage without you. We'll lose the house." "You selfish bastard," Tyler snarled in another. "Mom's crying because of you. Hope you're happy." After 2 days of this, I blocked all their numbers. I needed peace. A week later, my phone started ringing with calls from relatives I barely spoke to. First my Aunt Linda, then my cousin Steve, even my father's brother who lived in Arizona. Apparently, my mother had been busy spreading her version of events. "Your mom says you're trying to make them homeless," Aunt Linda said when I finally answered one of her calls. "What's going on, honey?" I took a deep breath and explained the situation. The will, the dinner, and most importantly, the fact that I'd been paying their mortgage for 4 years without anyone in the family knowing. "That can't be right," she said, sounding genuinely confused. "Your mom told everyone you just helped them with the down payment." "I paid every single mortgage payment since they bought the house," I replied, "plus extra for bills. You can ask them yourself." Similar conversations followed with other relatives. Some sided with me, some with my parents. A few refused to believe I'd been financially supporting my parents at all, insisting I was lying to make myself look better. Fed up with the whispers and accusations, I finally posted a detailed explanation on Facebook, laying out the financial support I'd provided over the years and why I decided to stop. I ended it with, "I love my family, but I can't keep subsidizing their lifestyle while being treated as an outsider. It's time for me to prioritize my own future." The post generated dozens of supportive comments, but also plenty of criticism. Some relatives thought I was wrong to air family business publicly. Others suggested I should keep paying the mortgage regardless of the will situation because they're still your parents. A month passed without any contact from my family. I'd started to think maybe they'd finally accepted my decision and moved on. Work was busy as usual, and I was finally enjoying the financial freedom of not supporting 4 extra adults. I'd even put a deposit down on that trip to Italy I'd been dreaming about for years. But peace never lasts long in my family. It was a Tuesday when I got the assignment to oversee a project in Sacramento. The company had just completed construction on a medical office building, and they needed someone to handle the final inspections and client walkthrough. "It's just 3 days," my boss assured me. "You'll fly out Wednesday morning and be back Friday night." I packed lightly, just a carry-on suitcase with the essentials and my laptop. The trip went smoothly. The client was thrilled with the building, the inspections passed with only minor issues to address, and I even managed to enjoy a nice dinner at a local restaurant recommended by the concierge at my hotel. By Friday afternoon, I was on a flight back home, feeling accomplished and ready for a relaxing weekend. When I finally arrived at my apartment building around 8:00 p.m., the first thing I noticed was that something looked off about my door from down the hallway. As I got closer, my stomach dropped. The entire door frame was covered in expanding foam, the kind that hardens into a solid mass. Someone had deliberately sprayed it all around my door, making it impossible to insert my key or open it from the outside. "What the hell?" I muttered, setting down my suitcase and touching the foam. It was completely hardened. There was no way I was getting into my apartment without professional help. I pulled out my phone and called the building's emergency maintenance number, but got voicemail. Next, I tried the building manager, who answered on the 4th ring. "Mitchell, what can I do for you?" "Someone vandalized my apartment door," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. "They sprayed it with expanding foam. I can't get in." There was a pause on the other end. "That's unusual. I'll call our locksmith service, but it might be a couple of hours before they can get there. It's Friday night." I ended up sitting in the hallway next to my luggage for nearly 3 hours before a sleepy-looking locksmith arrived with his tools. He whistled when he saw my door. "Someone really didn't want you getting in," he observed as he assessed the damage. "This is going to be tricky." It took him almost an hour to cut away enough of the foam to access the lock mechanism. By midnight, I was finally able to enter my apartment, exhausted and furious. Once inside, I went straight to my laptop. I had installed a security camera in my hallway after a package had been stolen 6 months earlier. The camera was aimed directly at my front door and uploaded footage to a cloud server I could access remotely. I found the relevant time frame and started the playback. At first, there was nothing, just an empty hallway. Then, around 2 p.m. on Thursday, a familiar figure appeared. Tyler. My brother was wearing a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes and had his hoodie up, but I'd recognize his walk anywhere. He looked both ways down the hallway, then pulled a can from his backpack and began spraying the foam around my doorframe. He worked methodically, making sure to cover every inch of the lock and the seam where the door met the frame. When he was done, he stepped back to admire his work, then hurried away. I watched the footage 3 times, my anger building with each viewing. This wasn't just petty revenge. This was criminal vandalism, and it would cost thousands to repair properly. The next morning, I took the video footage to the local police station and filed a formal complaint against my brother. "Do you have any idea why he would do this?" the officer asked as she took my statement. "Financial disputes," I said simply. I didn't feel like explaining my entire family drama to a stranger. The officer nodded and continued typing. "We'll have someone contact him for questioning. In the meantime, do you have somewhere safe to stay if you're concerned about your safety?" "I'll be fine," I interrupted. "I just want him held accountable for the damage." 3 days later, I received a call from the same officer. "Ms. Mitchell, we brought your brother in for questioning. He initially denied everything, but when we showed him the video footage, he admitted to vandalizing your door." "Good," I said, feeling a grim satisfaction. "What happens now?" "We've charged him with criminal mischief and property damage. Given the cost of repairs, it's a more serious charge. He could be looking at fines and possibly probation." I thanked her and hung up. Almost immediately, my phone rang again. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I answered anyway. "Jasmine, what have you done?" It was my father, his voice trembling with rage. "The police arrested Tyler, your own brother. They didn't arrest him, Dad. They brought him in for questioning after I filed a complaint about him vandalizing my apartment. He's just a kid. He made a mistake. He's 24 years old," I replied flatly, "and his mistake is going to cost over $3,000 to fix properly. The building manager says they'll have to replace the entire door and frame. This is how you treat family? By calling the police on them. Family doesn't vandalize each other's homes, Dad." There was a pause before he spoke again, his voice lower. "What do we need to do to make this go away?" $3,000 for the repairs," I said immediately. "Pay for what he destroyed and I'll withdraw the complaint." "That's extortion." "That's consequences," I corrected him. "Tyler destroyed my property, and now he needs to pay for it, or he can deal with the legal system. His choice." My father hung up without another word. The next day, my mother called. Unlike my father, she didn't yell. Instead, her voice was cold and cutting. "I never thought you'd sink this low," she said, "using the police to get revenge on your own family." "It's not revenge, Mom. It's holding Tyler accountable for his actions. He was upset. We all are. You've left us struggling to make ends meet after we relied on your help for so long. The mortgage company is threatening foreclosure." I get back a sarcastic response. "I'm sorry you're having financial difficulties, but that doesn't give Tyler the right to vandalize my home." She was quiet for a moment. "And if we pay, you'll drop the charges." "Yes." "Fine," she said tersely. "We'll send you the money, but don't expect anything else from us ever again." I nearly laughed at the irony. That was already made perfectly clear at our family dinner, Mom. I received a bank transfer for precisely $3,000 2 days later. I told the police that I no longer wanted to file charges. Despite sounding frustrated, the officer stated she understood. "Family situations can be complicated," she replied with empathy. "You have no idea," I said. "I haven't spoken to my family directly in 6 months. I have never had a better life. My money is mine for the first time in my adult life. Time is mine. My own destiny lies ahead.